Hi. This module looks at plant form and function. How does the plant body grow, and what are some of the factors that influence the overall shape of the mature plant? We're going to start off looking at an experiment, a rather famous experiment from 1945 by Clausen and Keck and Heisey. They were all professors at Stanford, and they were interested in this one plant called the yarrow plant. Grows all over California. And here's the thing that they noticed. Now remember, the worksheets that I'm using here, you can download them from Polylearn if you want to. And also this whole presentation will be posted as a PDF when I'm done. So this is a figure from their paper. And what they noticed is that they could find this plant growing all across California. Over here, this is starting at the Pacific Ocean. And then here we're moving inland as we go this way, up here eventually to the Sierra Nevada mountains, which are a pretty big range of mountains. And so you could find this yarrow plant growing at all of these different elevations. And what they found was that the phenotype of the plants was very different. Right down here, in the lower part, in the closer to the ocean, the yarrow plants tended to be bigger, where if you went up here, up into the mountains, the yarrow plants looked very small. And they were curious about the phenotype here. What was really causing this difference in phenotype? Was it the environment that these plants were living in that was affecting it? Or potentially were there genetic differences between these plants across this whole range? Well, they came up with a neat experiment to do this. They took some cuttings from these yarrow plants at different elevations. So they would take 3 cuttings, and they took one from one of these plants that lives very close to Stanford University, down near the ocean, which is pretty big. And then they also went up here into the mountains, and they took 3 cuttings from this too. Now, with cuttings, you might be familiar with this, but what you can do with plants that's kind of nice is that any cell in a plant can be used to regenerate a whole new plant. So, agriculturists have been using this for a long time. If you take a plant and you chop a little piece off, you can grow that piece into a whole brand new individual. And by doing this, what's nice about that is that they are genetically identical. They're clones of each other. And so they could take these 3 genetically identical plants and plant them at different elevations. So now we're going to next stop and make some predictions for this. All right, so we're going to think about these plants growing at high elevation, at some sort of a medium elevation, and then a low elevation. Now, I've already put some of the pictures in here, right? Because this is what this plant looks like when it's grown at high elevation. So what we want to do is think about some predictions about what might this plant look like if it was grown at the other elevations. And here, again, this one, we already know what its phenotype is. This San Gregorio plant is going to be pretty tall at the low elevations, but what is it going to look like above? Now, I'm going to ask you to make predictions under 2 scenarios. The first one is if the environment determines the phenotype. All right, so in other words, genes don't matter. What matters is the environmental conditions. What would we expect to see if we grew these 3 cuttings? We have 3 cuttings from this plant, this here, here, and here. What are those going to look like? And then the other alternative that I want you to think about is if genes determine the phenotype. In other words, the environment doesn't matter, and it's just the genes and where the plant, it's just the genes of the plant and not where it's growing that determine what its phenotype is going to look like. Again, you have sort of your controls here already in place for you, and if you want to, you can either think about it or sketch out what you think the phenotypes of the plants are going to be. The other plants that aren't shown here, what they're going to look like in these scenarios.